My name is Kathy, a 40-year-old office worker specializing in clerical work. I live with my husband, Bob, who is 3 years my senior and also works at the same company. Despite our 10-year marriage, we do not have children. I felt a pressing urgency to start a family right from the outset when we married at the age of 30. Both of us harbored the desire for children, though my biological clock ticked louder than Bob's. I believed my limit was 35, wanting to navigate childbirth and parenthood while I still had ample energy, despite not being particularly robust physically. However, my wish remained unfulfilled. Bob and I began trying for a baby immediately after our wedding, but months passed with no signs of pregnancy. Eventually, we sought testing at an obstetrics and gynecology clinic. The results revealed some challenges on my end that made conception difficult. While not impossible, the odds were discouragingly low. Bob's disappointment was palpable as he questioned, "Can I become a father?" Seeing him so crestfallen left me speechless. We persisted in our efforts to conceive, clinging to a slim hope. But ultimately, a child did not come to us. Trying to uplift my despondent husband, I offered, "It's not the end of the world. Let's cherish our life together as a couple." He nodded in resignation, replying, "Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it. Let's just take things as they come." However, over time, I noticed a change in Bob. During our walks around town, seeing families with children would prompt him to muse, if we had a child, would we be enjoying outings like that on weekends? Visiting a colleague's home where kids were present, he would comment wistfully, "You're fortunate to have children." His envy apparent, I began to wonder if deep down he couldn't let go of the idea of having a child, and his longing made me uneasy. Then Bob began to grow distant from me. When we were actively trying to conceive, he had been incredibly supportive, often reminding me not to overexert myself, fearing it might affect our chances of pregnancy. He eagerly took on household chores and heavy lifting, always insisting, "I'll handle that," with a caring attitude. On weekends, he willingly shouldered the household responsibilities, reasoning, "You manage during the week." However, once we learned of my difficulty conceiving, everything changed. He abruptly stopped helping around the house, claiming, "I'm tired." Household chores are a wife's duty, aren't they? He spent his weekends idling, either sleeping or absorbed in his smartphone. Suddenly burdened with more tasks, my health began to decline. When I fell ill, his response was callous, "Figure it out yourself." I felt powerless to confront him because, in truth, my infertility was the root of our struggles. I began contemplating divorce. Just as I was grappling with these issues, Bob received a transfer offer. He had been selected for a major project at a subsidiary across state lines, prompting his relocation. Naturally, assuming I would accompany him, I was surprised when he declared, "You needn't come. I'll go alone." Those words gave me pause. Perhaps his distance and coldness stemmed from frustration over our inability to have children. Separating temporarily might help him sort through his emotions, and we could possibly mend our relationship. Reluctantly, I agreed, saying, "All right, I'll stay here. Take care." I saw him off after his transfer. He returned home only about once a month, often leaving again soon after. While this became routine, I cherished those brief visits, believing that if he truly disliked me, he wouldn't bother to return. As time passed, Bob gradually began to change. Initially unchanged, he eventually softened. He started bringing me gifts, saying, "I picked this up for you. Enjoy." Despite his limited time, he accompanied me on shopping trips and checked in on me, asking, "Are you alright? Is something bothering you?" I began to believe he was reverting to his former caring self. Initially slated for a 1-year assignment, Bob ended up staying for 2 years due to project delays. By the second year, he ceased mentioning our inability to have children. When we encountered families with children, he no longer expressed bitterness but instead remarked, "We couldn't have children together, but I've made peace with it." I felt a wave of relief knowing he had come to terms with our situation. 2 years later, he completed his work assignment and returned home to me. "Welcome back. You must be exhausted." I greeted him. "I'm finally home. Now we can be together," he replied with calmness. Yet our peaceful reunion was short-lived. Upon his return, he approached me with surprising news. "There's a young relative in my family who had a baby before marriage. She feels unable to raise the child alone due to her age. Would you consider adopting the baby?" His proposal caught me off guard. "What's going on?" I asked in bewilderment. He explained, "Since we couldn't have our own child, I thought adopting this baby and raising it as our own could be a solution." Overwhelmed by this sudden request, I asked for time to think. But doubts nagged at me. We had little contact with his family, exchanging Christmas cards once a year. Without a wedding ceremony, I knew little of his relatives. Reluctant to adopt a child from near strangers, I requested, could I meet the child's parents? I'd like to understand their situation better. He adamantly refused, asking, why does it matter who they are? Why this sudden interest? Sensing his defensiveness, I insisted on knowing more about the child's background and the father's whereabouts. He grew defensive, snapping, the father abandoned them. Okay, stop prying into their lives. It's about helping the child in need. His reaction unsettled me. Then he exploded, enough. If you won't agree to this, it's over between us. Leave right now. In his outburst, I sensed his true motive. He prioritized having a child at any cost, disregarding my feelings entirely. It was clear where I stood in his priorities, and I realized I had reached my breaking point. Okay, I'll gather my things and go, I stated calmly. Swiftly, I packed my belongings and left our home that very day. With nowhere else to go, I sought refuge in a motel near the train station. The divorce proceedings with my husband proceeded smoothly. We resolved everything through our respective lawyers to prevent any conflicts, settling matters like alimony, property division, and other issues without incident. Feeling uncomfortable working at the same company as him, I made the decision to resign and secured a new job elsewhere. With proficiency in computer skills and administrative assistant certifications, I secured a position at a small law firm. Adjusting to my new workplace took some time, but I soon settled into a routine and found peace in my daily life. Having lived apart from my husband for 2 years, returning to an empty home had become my norm. One day, about a year into my new job, my ex-husband unexpectedly appeared at my workplace, holding a small child. Surprised to see me at the reception, he blurted out, "What are you doing here?" Clearly taken aback. "I work here. Why wouldn't I be?" I replied, puzzled. His face drained of color. Curious about the child he held, I guided him to meet with my supervising attorney, where a startling revelation unfolded. "Sir, I've had doubts since this child was born a year ago. I don't believe he's biologically mine," he confessed. Understanding the gravity of the situation, I asked, "If it's confirmed that the child isn't yours, what do you intend to do?" "I'll seek a divorce from my wife," he asserted. Legally, paternity disputes typically need to be raised within a year of the child's birth. Even if a DNA test proves the child isn't yours, you may still be obligated to pay child support, the attorney explained calmly. "What? That's absurd," he exclaimed. "It's a legal reality supported by Supreme Court precedents," the attorney affirmed. As a clerk, I diligently recorded their conversation, and during my work, a realization dawned on me. My ex-husband had cheated during our marriage and fathered a child from that affair. Judging by the child's age and the timeline, it was evident the child was conceived around a year after he returned from a business trip. His uncharacteristic kindness towards me since that time suddenly made sense. I suspected it was guilt-driven. It seemed his current wife was a younger colleague from his workplace. Each time he spoke, his gaze towards me betrayed a hint of pallor, understandably so, as his former wife, with whom he attempted to leave for the child born of his affair, was now right before him. In the end, he conceded, "Fine, I'll undergo a DNA test first and then reconsider." With those words, he left, visibly crestfallen. Later that day, I confided in my lawyer, Mr. Williams, about the return of my ex-husband and our past divorce. Mr. Williams seemed taken aback and inquired, "Did you know you can claim alimony due to infidelity within 2 years of discovery? What are your intentions?" "Absolutely, I want to pursue it. I intend to claim it from both my ex-husband and his mistress," I affirmed. "Then let's initiate the process immediately. Thank you for your trust," Mr. Williams responded. Subsequently, through Mr. Williams, I pursued alimony claims against both my ex-husband and his current wife, formerly his mistress, ensuring they couldn't evade their financial responsibilities. I directed the claims not only to their residence but also to their workplaces and his in-laws' address. Soon after, I received a call from my ex-husband. "What's this claim about?" he demanded. "It's an alimony claim based on your infidelity. We're already divorced, but that doesn't exempt you from financial obligations," I asserted firmly. "That's incorrect. You can claim alimony for infidelity within 2 years of its discovery. We finalized our divorce a year ago, and your infidelity has only recently come to light." so the falls well within the claim period. At that moment, a woman's voice I didn't recognize intervened and took over the phone. "Hello? What's this claim about?" she demanded. Caught off guard by her sudden confrontation, I asked cautiously, "Who am I speaking with?" "I'm his wife. Withdraw at least my part of this claim," she'd insisted firmly. "But claiming alimony is a natural step after being betrayed," I countered. "Listen, he told me he was single. I believed him and started a relationship. I had no idea he was married at the time," she argued defensively. "That doesn't change the fact that you had an affair with my husband," I retorted. "I'm demanding $20,000 from each of you. Our child will need financial support as they grow," she insisted. "We can't afford such a large amount of $40,000. I responded. "That's not my concern. You both work, and he holds a decently high position, so I don't see a financial issue," she shot back. "Because of your claim, he's been demoted and had his pay reduced. I've also been downgraded to part-time, causing a drop in our income. We simply can't manage to pay such a sum," I exclaimed, my voice rising with frustration. "Then ask your parents to cover it. I won't back down. I absolutely won't pay," she insisted firmly. Amidst her raised voice, he returned to the phone. "I understand the financial strain this claim may cause, but I cannot withdraw it," I asserted firmly. "By the way, let me share something significant while we're on this topic," I continued. "What is it?" he asked with evident curiosity. "Do you recall we underwent fertility testing a few years ago?" I queried. "Yes, I remember. It revealed I had an issue, but you also had a problem," he recalled. "You might find this surprising, but the test results actually indicated that both of us had fertility issues," I revealed calmly. "You're joking, right?" he responded incredulously. "It's true. Although I had a known issue, the results showed you had one too. I chose not to disclose this to spare you the time, but I still have the test report. Would you like me to send it to you?" I offered sincerely. "No, that can't be true. It's impossible," he protested, clearly taken aback. "The doctor explained that both of us faced challenges, not just me. When you heard about my issue, you left the office abruptly before hearing the full details," I clarified. "That's a lie. It must be a lie," he muttered, evidently overwhelmed. In reality, the doctor confirmed there were significant challenges on both our sides. I had intended to keep this to myself, but I see no reason to hide it now, I concluded firmly. I told him, "Let's leave it there. I'm busy," and hung up the phone. Afterwards, I successfully secured a total of $20,000 from each of them for emotional distress, $40,000 in total. She refused to pay, leaving Bob to shoulder the entire burden. Later on, Bob did arrange for a DNA test for the child, confirming his fears that the child wasn't his. It seemed he contemplated divorcing his wife, but with impending child support and emotional distress payments, he felt compelled to remain in the strained marriage with his former affair partner. Financial constraints due to his demotion further tied his hands. I learned from him during his visit to pay the compensation that he hoped I would raise the child with his strong-willed affair partner. He confided that if he had custody, he planned to use it as an excuse to end their relationship. Recently, tensions have escalated in his household and work has become difficult amidst judgment from colleagues about their adulterous reputation. As for me, I've grown accustomed to my single life and enjoy a peaceful existence. I have plans for a trip with friends during the next long holiday. Despite being alone, my days are fulfilling with work and socializing. "Help me, brother," I whispered, as I stumbled to my brother's place in the dead of a freezing winter night. My clothes were tattered, and I cradled a baby in my arms. My brother's face went pale at the sight of me, frail, disheveled, clad only in a ragged shirt and barefoot. "What on earth happened?" he exclaimed, quickly ushering me inside and warming up the room. The baby, wrapped snugly in my jacket, slept soundly, but it couldn't stop shivering. "Who did this to you, my precious little sister?" my brother muttered through clenched teeth. "Lily, it's going to be okay now." Upon hearing his gentle voice, a wave of relief washed over me, and it felt as if all my strength had drained away. "My name is Lily. I'm a 27-year-old homemaker with a young son. I used to be a nurse, but I left my job when Terry, the son of the hospital director where I worked, proposed to me. I was drawn to Terry's kindness and his efficient work style. I have a brother, Derek, who is 5 years older than me. Our family consists of Derek and our grandparents since our parents died in a car accident when I was 4 and Derek was in 3rd grade. A truck driver who had fallen asleep at the wheel collided head-on with their car. My mother, a nurse, had been working late, and the accident happened when my father went to pick her up. Derek often recalls our father's last words before leaving that night. "Derek, I'm counting on you to take care of Lily." What might have been a casual request turned into a lifelong commitment for my brother. He has never let me down, always protecting me like a superhero. After the accident, it seemed we would be sent to separate foster homes, but our paternal grandparents, with whom we had little contact before, stepped in to take us. Our grandfather, with his white hair and long bushy beard, looked just like Santa Claus. When he first saw Derek, he muttered, "You're the spitting image of your father," and I believe I saw tears in his eyes. Our grandmother, a kind woman, hugged me tightly and sobbed, "Poor child." Later, I learned that our father had a falling out with our grandfather and left home, seeking freedom instead of continuing the family business. This led to a long estrangement, but our grandparents took us in despite the past. We moved to their home nestled in the rural mountains. Our grandfather, a renowned potter whose works fetched thousands of dollars, and our grandmother, whose kindness knew no bounds, raised us without financial difficulties. Under their care, Derek and I grew up happily. Derek went off to a prestigious university in the city, while I attended nursing school. We both pursued our dreams until our grandmother's health began to decline. Derek, who had been working in the city, returned home to help care for her. I wanted to return home too, but since I was still a student, Derek advised against it. Derek had always been interested in our grandfather's work, but our grandfather had firmly encouraged him to follow his own path, which led Derek to attend university. I believe our grandfather regretted forcing our father to continue the family business and didn't want his grandchildren to go through the same experience. However, Derek insisted on learning pottery from our grandfather. He had always been handy and pottery suited him well. Besides, Derek excelled in everything: academics, sports, and he was popular among his friends. He was truly a superhero. While taking care of our sick grandmother, Derek also learned the trade from our grandfather. After I graduated from nursing school, I started working as a nurse. It was then that Terry proposed to me and we got married. Our wedding was grand, and the joyous smiles of Derek and our grandfather are what I remember most. Derek brought pictures of our parents to the wedding. "We all just want you to be happy, Lily, including our late mom and dad," he said, shedding tears openly. Our grandmother, too ill to attend, cried tears of joy when she saw the video of the ceremony. I was truly blessed with a great family. I quit my job as a nurse, moved into Terry's family home, and began to support him as a full-time homemaker. We had a child, and my husband was kind. We were living a happy life. Until then, my life had seemed to be smooth sailing. I couldn't even imagine the hellish days that were to come. Not long after, my grandmother passed away. Terry attended the funeral with me and comforted me. My grandfather's disappointment was severe. I couldn't find the words to speak to him. While I was busy supporting our grandfather, my brother Derek delved deeper into his pottery. Half a year had passed when I found myself fleeing to Derek's place in the middle of a freezing winter night, wearing nothing but ragged clothes, holding a baby in my arms. As Derek beheld my drastically changed appearance, he was rendered speechless. I stood there, so thin and weak, clad only in a tattered shirt, barefoot. "What on earth happened?" he finally managed to say, ushering me inside and warming up the room. The baby, wrapped in my coat, slept soundly, but I couldn't shake off the shivers that racked my body. "Who did this to my dear sister?" Derek muttered through clenched teeth. A wave of relief washed over me upon hearing his voice, as if all strength had drained from my body. I didn't want to burden Derek or our grandfather, but I had no choice. I had to tell them. I began to recount the events at my in-laws' house. Terry and I had been living together, but due to my in-laws' insistence that I rest during and after pregnancy, we moved in with them. My in-laws, both remarried, welcomed us warmly. My father-in-law's kindness was particularly touching, as I had no father of my own. However, my mother-in-law seemed to harbor resentment. "You're flirting with my husband, aren't you, you disgusting woman?" she accused, launching into a campaign of verbal and physical abuse. She disparaged my upbringing, asserting that I could never blend in with their family's affluent background. As if that weren't enough, I found myself facing additional challenges due to a shortage of staff at the hospital. As a former nurse, I often found myself called in to assist at the hospital alongside my husband, Terry. However, during this time, I noticed something deeply unsettling. Terry, being the son of the hospital director, took it upon himself to reprimand the nurses in an unreasonable manner. "Move quicker, you're a nurse getting paid, aren't you? Don't slack off just because my father is lenient. Once I take over this hospital, I won't be so forgiving," he would bark at them. His harsh words towards the hardworking nurses were unreasonable and unjust. Attempting to intervene, I interjected, "Terry, don't you think that's too harsh? Everyone here is trying their best." Unfortunately, my husband didn't take kindly to my interference. In front of the other nurses, he flew into a rage, furious that I had dared to stand up to him. Since that incident, Terry became distant towards me, perhaps influenced by my mother-in-law, who had been insinuating from the start that I was too soft on your wife and that I was taking you for granted. Meanwhile, my father-in-law, though unable to openly oppose his wife, did what he could to protect me. Unfortunately, when my father-in-law fell seriously ill and became bedridden, the situation worsened. Seizing the opportunity, my mother-in-law made me take on all the household chores, treating me like a mere housekeeper. I found myself juggling caring for my son, cooking, laundry, and cleaning, all while enduring mistreatment. Even in front of my ailing father-in-law, my mother-in-law's cruelty knew no bounds. "Please don't speak to Lily that way," he would weakly protest, only to be met with her venomous retorts. Her abuse escalated, and I found myself being deprived of basic dignity. "Housekeepers don't eat with the family. Eat the leftovers later," she commanded, forcing me to subsist on scraps. Despite the hardships, I endured it all for the sake of my son and my ailing father-in-law. I was so distraught that I lost my appetite. When I glanced in the mirror, I was taken aback by the gaunt and worn reflection staring back at me. My husband's words cut deep. "I only married you because you were somewhat attractive, but I never imagined you become such a disheveled woman," he sneered, insisting that I relocate from our bedroom to the storage room. The cruelty was staggering. The verbal abuse didn't stop with me, it extended to our son. "Of course he's not smart. Look at who his mother is," my mother-in-law would scoff. "His constant crying is annoying. Make him stop right now," my husband demanded. It felt like something inside me had snapped. Determined to escape, my sole concern was my father-in-law's well-being. However, to my surprise, he urged me to flee to my brother's place. Pressing several $100 bills into my hand, he insisted I leave immediately. Without hesitation, I wrapped my son in my coat and hailed a taxi with the money my father-in-law had given me. I rushed to my grandfather's house, where I poured out the entire ordeal to him and my brother Derek. Derek, his usually calm demeanor replaced by a furious expression I had never seen before, clenched his fists in anger. Assuring me that things would be okay, he said, "You've been through so much. It's time to relax." Overwhelmed with emotion, I broke down in tears. Even my grandfather, typically reserved, muttered, "I can't forgive this." A few days later, leaving my son under my grandfather's care, I made the decision to return to my in-laws' house with Derek to retrieve my belongings. Having left abruptly without a word, I anticipated trouble upon our return. My husband greeted me with a cold gaze and muttered, "You finally returned, huh?" Derek, maintaining his composure, calmly stated, "My sister seems very distressed, so we'll be taking care of her for a while. We've come today to collect some of her personal belongings." To this, my husband retorted, "I married her, so if she doesn't come back, there will be no one to do the chores. That's a big problem for me." Looking down on Derek, my mother-in-law remarked, "I heard you do pottery. It must be a tough life. Even if you take care of my daughter-in-law, it's going to be difficult for you, right? Please send her back. It's a problem for us too." I could see Derek struggling to contain his anger as we requested to retrieve our belongings. Directed to a storage room in the corner of the hallway, which served as my room, we found it cramped and neglected. Cardboard boxes and old appliances cluttered the space, with only a few changes of clothes for me and my son. There were no heating appliances, just a thin blanket and mattress. Derek, visibly shaken by the harsh conditions, confronted my mother-in-law. "Is this where you've shoved my dear sister and her child?" Her reply was callous. She should be grateful just to have a room. She's just a housekeeper after all. Eager to leave, yet concerned about my father-in-law, I wished to see him. He greeted me warmly and quietly handed me something. expressing his regret for not being able to protect me. For several days, we made preparations, and with my grandfather and Derek by my side, I returned to my in-laws' house. Determined to stand up for my son, I knew I couldn't keep running away forever. Upon arriving home, I handed my husband the divorce papers. His initial surprise quickly turned to defiance as he declared he wouldn't pay alimony or child support, claiming I had chosen to leave. To support my case, I played a recording in front of his mother, an audio documenting her belittling me and him shouting abuse. "This is evidence of the abuse I suffered," I informed them. Their shock was palpable as they asked when I had even recorded this. It turned out my father-in-law had discreetly recorded everything to help me, passing the recording to me when I collected my belongings earlier. My brother Derek, who had graduated from law school and passed the bar exam while assisting our grandfather, assured me that I had grounds for divorce. He promised to fight for me wholeheartedly. As the tension escalated, my wheelchair-bound father-in-law appeared, handing divorce papers to my mother-in-law. He, too, had recorded the verbal abuse he endured and was now ready to divorce. Preferring life in a care facility over living with my mother-in-law, he asserted his decision firmly. My mother-in-law's reaction was unexpected. She laughed and declared her willingness to divorce as well, eager to return to her luxurious life. However, the situation took a dramatic turn when my grandfather made a call, announcing his termination of any contracts with a family like ours. It emerged that the major department store, run by my mother-in-law's brother, was on the brink of bankruptcy. He had been negotiating to exhibit and sell my grandfather's famous pottery, and the deal was close to finalization. However, a call from her brother, severing ties with her, left my mother-in-law stunned. Realizing the gravity of her situation, she began to plead for forgiveness, admitting her wrongdoing. At that moment, it became clear that change was inevitable. "I have nowhere else to go. Please let me stay here, Lily. I'm sorry. Please forgive me," my mother-in-law pleaded tearfully. But forgiveness seemed out of reach for us. We all coldly stared at her, unmoved by her tears. Yet amidst the tension, my husband seemed oblivious to the gravity of the situation. "I'm set to inherit this hospital. If you want a divorce, I'll pay alimony and child support. I'll marry someone younger and prettier than you," he said to me, his words laced with arrogance. However, my father-in-law interjected with a single sentence that changed everything. "The hospital has been sold," he declared, his eyes widening in shock. "What?" My husband's face drained of color as my father-in-law revealed that Terry had been orchestrating behind the scenes. "Get out of here right now," my father-in-law screamed at his stepson. My husband, not legally adopted by my father-in-law, had no claim to his assets. In contrast, I, legally adopted by my father-in-law, had been well cared for. Realizing the tide was turning against him, my husband quickly changed his tune, pleading for a fresh start with me, but I coldly dismissed him. Afterward, my son and I found solace and happiness at my grandparents' house. With each passing day, my son cried less, finding joy in playing outdoors. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were finalized, the audio tape proving crucial in establishing my mother-in-law's fault. They now live in a small rented apartment, their attempts at finding new jobs faltering. On the other hand, my grandfather enjoys comfort in a high-end senior home, where we visit him often. Terry continues his passion for pottery under my grandfather's guidance. Remarkably, my brother found love at a pottery exhibition, dating a woman with a passion for pottery. As for me, I work as a nurse at a hospital near my grandfather's house, fulfilling my dream inspired by my mother's legacy. My grandson David experienced his first winter this year. The weather report said it was a record cold day, and I couldn't help but worry about David and his mother, Yvonne. I hoped they hadn't gotten sick from the cold. That night, I sent Yvonne a message on my smartphone asking, "Are you and the baby okay? Not catching a cold?" But even though I sent it 2 or 3 times, there was no reply, not even a read receipt. She's always been so responsible, so I hoped she wasn't overdoing it. After waiting another hour, I tried calling, but there was no answer. Worried something serious had happened, I quickly put on my thick jumper and rushed out to drive to my son's family apartment. There was no response when I rang the intercom, and fearing the worst, that Yvonne had collapsed inside, I had the building manager open the door. The apartment was dark, with only light from the street lamps seeping in. Groping along the wall, I searched for the light switch. I fumbled for it several times, but the lights wouldn't turn on. What's going on here? I thought, feeling a mix of anxiety and irritation. With no other option, I used my smartphone's flashlight to look around. Yvonne, are you there? Could they be out? Just as I was about to leave, I thought I heard a baby's cry from the bedroom. Yvonne, are you there? I quickly headed to the bedroom. There, I found Yvonne shivering from the cold but desperately wrapping newborn David in a sheet to keep him warm. What happened? To my shock, Yvonne's once long and proud black hair was now chopped off, almost completely shaved. This is terrible. What happened here? My name is Mary Smith. I'm 61 years old. I've worked as a hairstylist for many years, running a salon out of my home. Chatting casually with my regulars during their appointments has always been the highlight of my day. The salon was originally started by my husband and me. However, he passed away from cancer when he was young, not long after our son Harry was born. Despite the challenges, I raised Harry on my own, but Harry didn't make it easy. He often skipped school and got into trouble when he did attend. After graduating high school, he didn't continue his education, instead spent his days hanging out in town. I often wondered if he felt inferior because he didn't have a father around or if I wasn't a good enough mother. I always worried about Harry's future but never found an answer. So when Harry suddenly said one day, "I want to be a hairstylist," I was so surprised I pinched my cheek, thinking I was dreaming. "What's gotten into you?" I asked. "Hairstylists are popular with the ladies, right?" Harry replied with a smirk. "I guess kids do grow up watching their parents, huh?" Regardless of the reason, I decided to take a positive view of my son showing interest in his future for the first time. Harry successfully graduated from cosmetology school and started working as an apprentice at a senior salon. That's where he met Yvonne, who would later become his wife. Harry was smitten with her at first sight, and after a strong pursuit, he announced to me with a confident smile, "I've decided to marry this girl," introducing me to Yvonne. "Nice to meet you. I'm Yvonne. You were a hairstylist too, right? I look forward to learning from you." Yvonne, with her long black hair and bright smile, was a wonderful woman. "I look forward to that," I replied, instantly liking her. A year after their marriage, Harry expressed his desire to start his own salon. Though he hadn't been an apprentice for long, he seemed to have gained a lot of confidence as a hairstylist. "I want to have my own place and prove my skills." Honestly, I was a bit worried. I knew from my experience that it's not easy for a newcomer to make it on their own in this industry, but I couldn't ignore the earnest look in Harry's eyes as he talked about his dream. "How much do you have saved up?" I asked. He showed me his bank book with a troubled look and a sigh. Despite having a steady income, he was spending just as much as he earned. With this pattern, he was far from having enough to start his own business. Harry had been squandering most of his earnings on leisure. Perhaps I should have advised him to give up then, but I smiled and said, "Don't worry about the money." Indulging him was maybe my way of making up for the loneliness he felt growing up without a father. Truth be told, I hadn't touched the life insurance money left by my late husband. "It's for Harry. You forgive me, right?" I whispered to my husband's portrait. One of my regulars was knowledgeable in real estate, so I consulted with her. "That place would be perfect," she said. It was a property that had been used as a barber shop until half a year ago, but the owner had retired due to old age. The location wasn't bad, and she thought it might be just right for Harry's new start. During the renovation, one of my regulars said, "Use my husband. He just lazes around the house on his days off anyway." Another chimed in, "My son's studying architecture in college and is home for the summer break. He can help out too, get some hands-on experience." Thanks to their help, the construction went smoothly. Once we got the health department's approval, the salon opened in no time. I never imagined I could set up my own business so quickly. You should thank everyone. It's not something you could have done alone. I know. I'm grateful to you, Mom," Harry said. Then I handed Harry the bank book containing the remainder of his father's inheritance. The purchase and renovation costs were lower than expected, so there was still more than half left. "This is a gift from your father to you. Use it wisely for business expenses and don't you dare waste it." Yeah, I'm not a kid. I get it," Harry said, chuckling in annoyance. "Don't worry, I'll keep a close eye on Harry to make sure he doesn't spend the money foolishly," Yvonne said with a bright smile. Her words made me laugh. With Yvonne's help, I didn't need to worry about interfering any further. I optimistically decided to watch over their business from a distance. But soon, I realized my optimism was misplaced. Yvonne occasionally visited my salon to update me on their progress, and each time her expression grew more somber. 3 months after Harry's salon opened, she confided, "Harry's not putting his heart into the work." "What? Harry, why?" He was so enthusiastic at first. Sure, he thought his skills would bring in customers, but within a month, he stopped smiling and began treating customers coldly. As a result, our reputation has plummeted and customers have stopped coming. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Harry had wanted his own salon so badly. What had changed in such a short time? Harry thought that being a good hairstylist was all it took, but running a salon is more than that. Yvonne sighed. She was right. Business doesn't work on the quality of your work alone. Customer service plays a huge role in success. It seemed Harry was missing that fundamental understanding. "So, what's Harry doing now?" I asked. "He's frustrated about the lack of customers and spends his days drinking. If he doesn't get his act together, we'll lose even more clients. Right now, I'm handling the customers we do have, but if our reputation keeps dropping, the business will only get worse," Yvonne explained, looking like she was on the verge of tears. I felt the same way. "All right, I'll have a serious talk with him next time I see him." "Thank you so much," Yvonne said, bowing deeply before brushing back her long black hair. "Your hair is always so stunning," I commented, trying to lighten the mood. "I started growing it out in middle school," she said proudly. "Been that long? Any particular reason?" "Are you familiar with hair donation?" Yvonne looked at me earnestly. "Hair donation? I think I heard about it at a hairstylist's meeting, but I don't know much about it." Yvonne's eyes sparkled as she explained, "It's about making wigs from real hair for children who've lost their hair due to congenital diseases, illness, or accidents. I've been growing my hair to donate to organizations involved in this. Isn't it wonderful to be able to help someone?" I read an article about an actress who was doing it and thought maybe I could do that too. "Wow, that's really admirable, especially for someone as young as you," I said, overwhelmed by Yvonne's passion. 6 months into her marriage with Harry, Yvonne got pregnant. She's always been so conscientious, always pushing herself too hard. "When I'm not looking, Yvonne, this is the most crucial time. You really shouldn't overdo it," I repeatedly warned her. She'd just lightly laugh and say, "Don't worry, I'm taking it easy, consulting with the baby in my belly." But in reality, Yvonne worked at the salon right up until the last month of her pregnancy, supporting the family while Harry's attitude worsened. Every time Yvonne updated me, I felt my own shortcomings as a mother. One day, I finished work early and decided to check on their salon. I ran into Harry just as he was about to leave. "Where are you going?" "Out for a drink. There won't be any more customers today anyway," he said nonchalantly, laughing off the situation. The lack of customers had become normal for Harry, and he wasn't even trying to improve things anymore. "You're about to become a father, you know." Harry just waved his hand dismissively and hopped on his motorcycle. "We're not done talking. Think about Yvonne for once." Yeah, I'll do that when I feel like it." He laughed and sped off. Inside the salon, Yvonne was cleaning the floor. "Today we managed to get just one customer," she said, smiling brightly despite looking exhausted. "Are you eating properly? You need to get enough nutrition. Don't worry about me. It's not just about you, it's for the baby," I said sternly, making sure she understood the gravity of the situation. Yvonne teared up a bit and thanked me. At times like this, a father should be there to support her. I wanted to shout at Harry, who was nowhere to be found. Yvonne told me the salon wasn't doing well and that Harry was spending money recklessly every night. Giving that babe book to Harry was a mistake. I regretted my decision. Despite being busy, Yvonne never neglected her hair care. Gently stroking her belly, she said, "I want to teach my child the joy of helping others." That's when I realized I wanted to support her since my son wasn't of much help. I decided to assist Yvonne at their apartment. "I'm always sorry to trouble you." "Don't worry about it. Just focus on the baby," she replied. It was my fault for not raising my son right. Because of that, Yvonne was suffering. Perhaps it was my way of atoning for my sins. At least at the end of summer, Yvonne went into labor earlier than expected and was rushed to the hospital. Harry was nowhere to be found, unreachable. I kept sending him messages, but there were no replies, not even read receipts. What on earth is he doing at a time like this? Yvonne's parents had passed away, so I was the only one who could be there for her. "Don't worry, Yvonne, I'm here," I kept encouraging her as she bravely faced childbirth. After a long and difficult labor, I was overwhelmed by the sound of the baby's cries. "He's born? You did it, Yvonne," I said, moved to tears. But Harry, who should have been there, never showed up. My grandson David was experiencing his first winter. The weather report said it was a record cold day. No wonder it was so chilly that I had trouble getting out of bed. My first thoughts were of Yvonne and newborn David. I hoped they weren't affected by the cold. Worried, I sent a message to Yvonne that night. "Are you and the baby okay? Haven't caught a cold?" But even after sending 2 or 3 messages, there was no response, not even a read receipt. I was concerned that Yvonne might be too ill to move. She's always been so responsible. I hope she's not overdoing it. After waiting another hour, I tried calling again, but the result was the same. Something's not right. Without a second thought, I put on my thick jumper and rushed out to their apartment. When I arrived, the place was engulfed in darkness. It's not uncommon for families to travel abroad during the holidays, but I hadn't heard anything about a trip from Yvonne and Harry, and they likely couldn't afford it anyway. I rang the intercom, but there was no response, fearing Yvonne might have collapsed. I immediately asked the building manager to open the door. "I'll wait outside. Please let me know if there's anything," I told the manager before stepping inside. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the street lamps outside. I remembered the light switch was right by the entrance. Relying on my memory, I groped for the light switch on the wall. But no matter how many times I flipped it on and off, the lights didn't respond at all. What's going on here? I thought, feeling a mixture of anxiety and irritation. With no other option, I used my smartphone's flashlight to illuminate the room as I stepped inside. "Yvonne, are you here?" I called out in the living room, but there was no answer. Maybe they had just gone out. Just as I was about to leave, I thought I heard a faint cry of a baby from the bedroom. "Yvonne, are you in there?" I quickly headed toward the sound. There was Yvonne, shivering from the cold, desperately wrapping newborn David in a sheet to keep him warm. What happened here? When I shone the light on her, I was shocked to see that her once long, proud black hair had been roughly cut off, almost to the scalp. Her eyes, red and swollen from crying, looked at me helplessly. "This is terrible. How did this happen?" I took off my jumper and draped it over Yvonne. "It's okay now. Just tell me what happened as much as you can." Yvonne began to speak slowly. She said that Harry had continued his daily escapades even after David was born. Eventually, they couldn't pay the electric bill anymore, and Yvonne, unable to bear it any longer, Yvonne scolded Harry. She had just wanted him to be more responsible as a father, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. In a fit of rage, Harry grabbed a pair of practice hair-cutting scissors and started cutting off Yvonne's hair. At first, Yvonne tried to resist, saying, "Stop it," but fearing any further resistance might accidentally harm David, she stopped resisting. Harry laughed mockingly, saying, "Now you won't be able to show your face in public." I was speechless at my son's cruel actions. "Why didn't you tell me it had gotten this bad?" I asked. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry," Yvonne apologized, blaming herself again. "No, Yvonne, it's not your fault. You're not the one to blame here. It's Harry. You did nothing wrong." I knew Yvonne hadn't confided in me because she didn't want to worry me. I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. The whole situation was a result of my overindulgence in raising Harry. My heart burned with shame and anger at my own failings and my son's inability to empathize with others. Taking a deep breath, I called Harry. "Hey, Mom, long time no talk." "What's up?" he answered, calling all of a sudden. "Just wanted to hear your voice. How's everything over there? Are Yvonne and David doing okay?" "Of course, everyone's fine and doing well. I've been calling home, but no one's picking up." "Where are you now?" There was a brief pause in his voice, as if he was concocting an excuse. "Actually, we're a family of 3 in Hawaii. We'll be back next week." "Hawaii, huh? That sounds nice," I responded, though I knew he was blatantly lying to me. What had I been doing all these years, taking care of Harry after losing my husband at a young age? I worked non-stop as a hairstylist. It was all to raise Harry into a respectable person. When he expressed a desire to become an independent hairstylist, I fulfilled his wish without hesitation. Yet Harry carelessly squandered the inheritance his father left, using it for his own pleasures and even mistreating his wife and child. My expectations for Harry turned into profound disappointment. "What would you like as a souvenir?" I'll bring you something nice, Harry asked. Anything's fine. You're coming back next week, right? Safe and sound, I replied. Hey, Mom, you sound a bit off. Is something wrong? Harry seemed to sense something, but I ended the call without responding. I informed the building manager waiting outside of my plans and decided to take Ivani and David back to my house. Then I started making calls to every place I could think of. A week later, Harry called me cheerfully, announcing that he had just landed at the airport. I'm back, Mom, and I've got souvenirs for you, he said, pretending to be the caring son. But my heart was no longer deceived by his act. That's nice to hear, I replied in a flat tone, though Harry didn't seem to notice anything unusual. About an hour later, a taxi pulled up in front of the apartment. Harry, clearly having enjoyed his solo trip to Hawaii with distinct tan lines from sunglasses around his eyes, unloaded a bunch of luggage from the trunk. He took out his keys, expecting to enter the apartment. Where his wife and son should be waiting, he must have thought that once he inserted and turned the key, the door would open immediately. However, no matter how many times he tried, the key wouldn't fit the lock. What's going on here? He exclaimed in frustration. I approached him quietly from behind and asked with a smile, Did you enjoy your trip to Hawaii? Though my heart was boiling with anger. Mom, you're here, Harry said, relieved to see me, misunderstanding the situation. Listen, Mom, I just got back and tried to enter the house, but the key won't fit. It must be Yvonne's prank. Punishing me for going on a trip alone, he tried to paint himself as the victim, blaming Yvonne, leaving Yvonne, who just gave birth, and newborn David behind. What were you doing? I told you I was in Hawaii with my family, Harry protested, suddenly panicking. Didn't you just say you went on the trip alone? I pointed out the contradiction. Harry was at a loss for words. You really had the nerve to lie about taking a family trip to Hawaii. Yvonne was here with the electricity cut off, shivering in the cold, holding David close to protect him, and to think she cherished her long hair, and you just cut it off mercilessly. Don't you feel any remorse as a human being? I guess I messed up there, but right now I just want to get inside the house. It's freezing in Japan, Harry replied, rubbing his arms theatrically, showing no sign of remorse. The cold Yvonne and David endured is nothing compared to this. Plus, you no longer have a home here. I've already canceled the lease on the apartment. It's time you find your own place to live, I stated firmly. Cancel the lease. What? Why would you do something like that without asking me? Harry protested, suddenly panicking. But the apartment was leased under my name after all. I couldn't just stand outside and continue this conversation, so I took Harry to a nearby coffee shop to talk further. Harry sipped his coffee silently, probably not even tasting it. He kept glancing between me and his coffee with a pale face. You were so strapped for cash that you couldn't pay the electric bill, yet you managed to go to Hawaii, I said, watching Harry grimace. Finally, he began to spill his selfish reasoning. He admitted that right from the start of his business, he was showing off to friends and women he picked up at the salon, spending his father's inheritance on his antics. He knew such spending would quickly deplete any fortune, but after getting a taste of the power of money, he continued his lavish lifestyle even after the inheritance ran out, racking up debts to buy gifts and take trips. You're quite the big spender, aren't you, especially for a failing business? I remarked. Don't worry. I'm a professional hairstylist. Once I get serious clients, they will come flooding in and I'll be able to support my family, Harry replied with unfounded confidence. I looked at him coldly. Your salon? I've already sold it, all the equipment too. It's too late to get anything back. I shattered his baseless confidence. That's a lie. Why would you do something like that? Harry's face turned red as he slammed his hand on the table. Oh, you were planning to continue with the salon? I thought you had abandoned it since you left everything to Yvonne. Besides, I bought the building and land in my name. You have no right to complain now, I retorted. But I was just trying to attract customers. I had it all planned out. Harry's eyes looked like those of a child about to burst into tears. If you're so confident in your skills, you should be able to start over from scratch, I said coldly, then left the coffee shop after placing money for the coffee on the table. A month passed, Yvonne and I avoided any contact with Harry. But unpleasant rumors inevitably reached my ears after I pushed him away. Harry apparently ran to his friends begging for money, but they were the kind who gathered around him for his money. Naturally, nobody was willing to help a financially drained Harry. He even got reported to the police for stalking some of the women he picked up at his salon. Although he only received a stern warning from the police, the lack of support from his acquaintances hit him hard, and he completely disappeared from our lives. He's probably living alone now in fear of harsh debt collectors. All this is the consequence of his own actions. My anger towards Harry isn't just about his reckless spending. What's unforgivable is how he neglected Yvonne and David, pushing them into hardship, and above all, cutting off Yvonne's long hair, which she had grown out for years for a noble cause, thereby potentially robbing unknown children of a brighter future. As a fellow hairstylist, I could never forgive Harry's actions. It will take a long time for Harry to truly understand the emotional pain Yvonne has endured. Yvonne herself never speaks of her hurt, but it's clear she's not unscathed. She appears to be keeping her feelings bottled up, probably not wanting to worry me. Wanting to do something to help, I reached out to my hairstylist friends and had a special wig made for Yvonne. It won't make up for my son's wrongs, but please use this, I said. Thank you, Mom, Yvonne said with a smile, though tears were streaming down her cheeks. Using my aching back as an excuse, I asked Yvonne to help out at the salon. She threw herself into the work, seemingly trying to forget her emotional scars. Hello, David, a regular greeted, and David in his cradle burst into giggles. Now some customers even come to the salon just to see him. He's like a little mascot, a baby that brings in good fortune. Yvonne, regaining her strength both physically and emotionally, has started the process of divorcing Harry. Seeing Yvonne's smile makes us all feel like we've shed 20 years, but it's true. Yvonne and David have brightened up the salon considerably. Attracted by Yvonne's cheerful atmosphere, more and more mothers with young children have become regulars. Let's have a great day today. Hi, how are you? Now the salon is filled with smiles again. In a quiet corner, David is peacefully sleeping, his cute little snores filling the air.